Hello and welcome, campers, to my latest review. I, of course, am Wigwam, and today we're going to talk about Fade to Silence, a game you may have missed because it's already faded to obscurity. Is it for good reason? Let's find out. Yes, it is. I can't even get through the review without spoiling it for you. This game's bad. Let's talk about why it's bad. Hey guys, have you ever just played a game and within the first 10 minutes you're like, I'm gonna hate this. This is gonna be a bad experience. But you just keep plowing on anyways because, you know, you have a review to do and they gave you a review copy and you're obligated to finish the game now that you've downloaded it. Does that happen to you? Just me? Cool. Review or not, I do always follow the rule of threes though. If I'm watching a movie, I'll give it at least 3 scenes. If I'm watching a TV show, I'll give it at least 3 episodes. Books get at least 3 chapters, and games get an entire 3 hours. I cannot believe I sat through 3 hours of this game. Let's just jump right into it. The gameplay. So Fade to Silence is like a survival game. Pretty much just that. It's pretty much just a survival and exploration adventure game. So you immediately get dropped in the game with no warning with this amazing cutscene with this very spooky ghost who talks like this the whole time like he's a Bane ripoff and tells you to do evil stuff like put the milk in first and then the cereal. I have a pretty good evil voice, I think. That's pretty spot on.
Dead again. Cold. Pale flesh, a feast for maggots. But the maggots have to wait. I'm not finished with you. Not yet.
So from there, the game's just like, hey, go in the other room and get a torch. Here's how you get torches. And then it's like, hey, beat this stuff up. And then you're right into the combat, which you'll immediately notice is not fun or satisfying in the slightest. You see, combat is dictated by the stamina bar. The stamina bar can be broken down into like 2 dodge rolls before it empties out, 3 quick attacks, or like 1 heavy attack and maybe a dodge roll. This isn't great, as the stamina takes just slightly too long to build back up, making every fight feel slower or more tedious than it needs to. Now, these mechanics could certainly work and have worked in other games, but the reason they don't work in this game is because all the enemies are just so damn stupid. Most enemies have like 1 or 2 basic attacks. They're incredibly telegraphed, they're incredibly slow, and the enemies themselves are incredibly dumb, getting stuck on all sorts of environment, having problems chasing you down. The parry system that it offers as a counter to the attacks that is supposed to allow an opening to allow combat to speed up and feel more satisfying is ill-timed and again just doesn't feel satisfying even when you do manage to pull it off. The timing itself also felt way too early to me. It didn't feel like a proper parry. As someone that's played tons and tons of fighting games, I think I have at least a slight knowledge on what a proper parry feels relative to combat hitting you, and this game was just like way too early on every hit. These seem like minor things, but you're constantly in combat. So again, this is a huge aspect of the game that's immediately, within the first 10 seconds of the game, just not fun. From there, the game just drops you into the world with really no idea what's going on, with your only quest simply being to survive and explore. It's not like Zelda, where it's like, hey, go rescue Zelda, and you're like, alright, I've got a feel for these characters, a feel of the controls, and a feel for what to do, because there's no tutorial island, there's no build up into the mechanics of the game, being that this game features permadeath mechanics, which, by the way, it features permadeath mechanics. It immediately, every time, just kind of drops you into the same situation to speed and streamline this process, but what this results in is you feeling immediately lost. But that's fine, there's always tutorials, there's tutorials in the menu, it teaches you how to do stuff if you're willing to read. What doesn't get resolved from this is the fact that there's no introduction into what's happening, who's happening, why do I care about these people. You see, you take a game like Horizon Zero Dawn, which does very similarly drop you into a very crazy world that immediately raises a ton of questions, but what they do to make it interesting is that Horizon Zero Dawn immediately introduces you to a host of characters and their personalities and some of their motivations, so that while you may not know what's going on and you may be filled with questions, you have a character driving you forward through the story to make you want to get answers. In Fade to Silence, we're dropped in this nobody nothing of a main character with his nobody nothing of a daughter in their nobody nothing of a town, and then it just says go, explore, don't you want to know what happened? And it's like, maybe a little bit, but I'm not invested in in anything yet. Like, you've got to get me hooked on the line to string me along with the story. You haven't hooked me, you've just dropped me back in the pond.
Promise you won't leave me alone like that again, Dad.
Allie, I have to go find supplies. We're low on food and firewood.
Moving on from all of that, the world is a big, white, blank bore to explore. You know, when you're in an exploration game, you want varied areas. You want all sorts of different worlds and biomes to explore as you go off, just like at Red Dead Redemption, which feels like every 100 miles you travel is an entirely new world to explore. Fade to Silence is just winter. It's just a lot of winter wherever you go. See, that's the thing about having a world that's entirely a frozen tundra, is that it's essentially a big, giant, white desert. And deserts are not that fun to explore. The game absolutely desperately tries to litter enough points of interest across the world to keep you exploring from point to point, trying to slowly drag you further and further from your settlement as you go off to explore, but the fact is that most of the points of interest are just not interesting. It's a grove of trees that you gotta chop down, it's a deer that you gotta hunt, it's some enemies that you gotta kill, it's a little land that you gotta purify from the evil impurity. The idea of the game is that you'll die over and over again while you build up, and that you'll slowly unlock the skill tree, which will unlock more levels, which will give you better starting stats so that it won't feel like such a punishment to die every time. This completely falls apart by the fact that it just isn't fun. So I would say that playing this game on survival mode is a mistake. Maybe you would get a little bit more of enjoyment out of the casual mode, as it puts it, which doesn't have permadeath. I think this game would maybe stand at least a little stronger on what they consider to be the casual setting, and should probably be pushing that from the main menu as opposed to the survival experience. Should be labeled as like an incredibly hardcore real life mode versus play this mode if you want to learn how to play the game. You see, survival games just need a rewarding loop. Survival games are very basic, right? You're constantly gathering items and food, building up your shelter, and then you're usually trying to accomplish some end goal, and you need a satisfactory feedback loop. Plenty of games have absolutely nailed this. Minecraft is technically a survival game these days. It's been one of the most popular games of the last decade. Of course, you've got games like The Forest, which are incredibly fun with all of its scary psychological horror that's going on, and an actual intriguing mystery and an intriguing cutscene that drops you into the game as well. But Fade to Silence just has none of this. While there may seem to be some slight intrigue to the story, I'll admit, there's just nothing driving me to want to really get any answers. Maybe Google a couple of story beats, but that's about as far as my interest has ever peaked on this game. The feedback loop itself for survival is just far too tedious. Gathering wood for survivors, which take your wood at an alarmingly fast and annoying rate. Trying to clear out new areas for your settlers, which requires you to freeze half your health bar, which makes you not want to do it. And then there's even finding the survivors themselves, which in itself can be difficult and random, and then when you manage to get one, if you're as lucky as I was, they'll glitch out after you finish the mission to get them, and then you won't even be able to collect them back to your settlement. It's all pretty great. Speaking of which, there's a ton of bugs in this game. I only experienced a few, and only one or two majorly impacted my gameplay, but taking a quick review through the other Steam reviews on this game while doing my research shows that other people have not been so lucky. There are absolutely game-breaking bugs that have persisted since launch, and they have barely no sign of being fixed either. So that pretty much sums up the gameplay, right? The combat's not satisfactory, the world isn't fun to explore, the survival mechanics aren't rewarding, it pretty much doesn't have much to offer. Maybe if you are an absolute hardcore survival fan, there is something in here that is enough of what you like to string you along with the game. If you're not that person, me, you're not gonna enjoy very much. Quickly reviewing some of the other stuff, let's talk about the ethereal tone music. It's boring. I don't even know what else to say about it apart from that, because it is so incredibly boring. It is just the sounds of blah wafting over the hills of Fade to Silence. I wish it would fade to silence, and I'd put on my own damn music. Visually speaking, this game looks like a sad-ass, like, first-round PS3 game. Like, it looks like a generation old and earlier in that generation as well. The mocap is bad, the characters look bad, the world itself is bland and white, the trees, all of the game just looks unappealing and uninspired. It feels like the game was rushed as hell. Maybe they just felt like development was getting away from them and it wasn't worth any further refinement, and they just started to push the game along to get it to some sort of final product so they could sell a couple copies. That is genuinely how I feel like this game was made. And that's pretty much it. I mean, every aspect of this game pretty much failed to grasp me. It was an absolute chore to force myself to get through this game. I've had this review key for like 2 or 3 weeks now, and I'm just now finally getting around to review it because even just getting myself to the 3-hour mark was an absolute pain. I really wish I had enjoyed this game more. I really think that maybe if you really are just passionate about survival games, maybe there is something more here for you. But for the average gamer, this isn't something that's going to entice you into this kind of game. It's not very rewarding. It's really maybe for fans of the genre at best. But hey, that's just my opinion. If you've played Fade to Silence, I would love to hear what you thought of it, positive or negative, down below in the comments. As always, if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, do all that YouTube stuff, or else the evil ghost will fucking get you. Or not, probably, because the game's evil and I'm gonna uninstall it, and I don't think that ghost is gonna get me at all. I love all of your beautiful faces. I hope you have a wonderful week, and or day, and or lifetime, and I will see you all in the next video, or stream, or in hell, ha 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 ha. Just kidding, that's just an evil voice that doesn't exist. Bye!